The National Electrical Code, or NEC, does not explicitly state a required workspace clearance specifically for a 4000 amp service. However, the NEC mandates that all electrical equipment must be installed in a way that permits sufficient access and space for proper maintenance and necessary repairs. This implicitly includes providing adequate workspace surrounding the equipment, ensuring the safe operation, inspection, and maintenance of that equipment can be performed. The code focuses on safety and accessibility rather than prescriptive measurements for every possible service amperage. Therefore, we must rely on general recommendations and best practices to determine appropriate workspace clearances for a 4000 amp service. Typically, a general recommendation for workspace clearance around electrical equipment suggests a minimum of 3 feet of clear space in front of the equipment. On all other sides of the equipment, a clearance of 2 feet is generally recommended. This is a common guideline intended to provide enough room for electricians and other qualified personnel to safely perform tasks such as inspecting, troubleshooting, and repairing the equipment. However, there are situations where these clearances can be adjusted. If the equipment is deemed unlikely to require frequent maintenance or repairs, these clearances might be reduced slightly. For example, the clearance in front of the equipment could potentially be reduced to 2 feet, and the clearance on other sides could be reduced to 1 foot. However, it's important to emphasize that these reductions should only be considered when a thorough assessment indicates that reduced clearances will not compromise safety or accessibility. Now, focusing specifically on a 4000 amp service, it's advisable to adhere to the more conservative clearance recommendations. Given the size and complexity of such a service, and the potential hazards associated with working on high amperage equipment, a minimum of 3 feet of workspace clearance in front of the equipment is strongly recommended. Similarly, maintaining a workspace clearance of at least 2 feet on all other sides of the equipment is also highly recommended. These larger clearances provide ample space for maneuvering tools, equipment, and personnel, reducing the risk of accidental contact with energized parts and improving overall safety. There are several factors to consider when determining the appropriate workspace clearance for any electrical installation. Firstly, the voltage of the equipment is a critical factor. Higher voltage equipment generally requires greater clearances to protect against arc flash and other electrical hazards. Secondly, the physical size and configuration of the equipment itself can influence workspace requirements. Larger equipment may necessitate greater clearances to provide adequate access to all components. Thirdly, the specific tasks that are likely to be performed during maintenance and repairs should be taken into account. If certain tasks require specialized tools or equipment, or if they involve working in close proximity to energized parts, then additional workspace may be necessary. Fourthly, local codes and regulations may impose additional requirements or restrictions on workspace clearances. It's essential to consult with local authorities and to adhere to all applicable codes and regulations. Fifthly, it is crucial to conduct a thorough risk assessment to identify potential hazards and to implement appropriate safety measures. This may involve using personal protective equipment, such as arc-rated clothing and gloves, and following safe work practices. Sixthly, proper planning and preparation are essential for safe and efficient maintenance and repairs. This includes ensuring that all necessary tools and equipment are readily available and that the work area is well lit and free of obstructions. Now let's consider more general information about working with electrical equipment. Always de-energize the circuit or equipment before working on it whenever possible. Use appropriate lockout/tagout procedures to prevent accidental re-energization. Use insulated tools and equipment to minimize the risk of electric shock. Wear appropriate personal protective equipment, such as safety glasses, gloves, and arc-rated clothing. Work in a well-lit and ventilated area. Be aware of potential hazards, such as exposed wires, sharp edges, and hot surfaces. Follow safe work practices at all times. If you are not qualified to perform electrical work, then hire a qualified electrician. The National Electrical Code, or NEC, provides detailed requirements for electrical installations, including workspace clearances. Specifically, NEC Article 110.26 addresses workspace requirements for electrical equipment operating at 600 volts, nominal or less. While this section doesn't explicitly cover 4000 amp services, the principles outlined in this article can be applied to determine appropriate clearances for high amperage services. NEC Table 110.26 provides minimum clear distances for different voltage levels and working conditions. These distances are measured from the front of the electrical equipment to the nearest grounded surface or obstruction. The table specifies different clearances based on the voltage to ground, the condition of the workspace, and the presence of exposed live parts. For example, for equipment operating at 151 to 600 volts to ground, the minimum clear distance is 3 feet for condition 1, which involves exposed live parts on one side and grounded parts on the other side. For condition 2, which involves exposed live parts on both sides, the minimum clear distance is 3.5 feet. For condition 3, which involves exposed live parts on one side and insulated parts on the other side, the minimum clear distance is 3 feet. It's important to note that these are minimum clearances, and larger clearances may be required based on the specific equipment and working conditions. In addition to the clearances specified in Table 110.26 the NEC also requires that the workspace be clear and unobstructed. Article 110.26 states that the workspace shall be clear and unobstructed for the full depth and width of the equipment. This means that there should be no pipes, ducts, or other equipment located within the workspace. Article 110.26 requires that the workspace be adequately illuminated. The minimum illumination level is 10-foot candles for the workspace around electrical equipment. Article 110.26d addresses access and egress from the workspace. It requires that there be at least one entrance to an egress from the workspace. The entrance and egress must be of sufficient size to allow for the safe removal of equipment. Article 110.26c addresses dedicated equipment space. It requires that the space above and below electrical equipment be dedicated to the electrical equipment. This means that there should be no foreign equipment, such as pipes or ducts, located in this space. Article 110.26f addresses headroom. It requires that there be sufficient headroom in the workspace. The minimum headroom is 6.5 feet. In addition to the NEC requirements, there may be local codes and regulations that impose additional requirements or restrictions on workspace clearances. It's essential to consult with local authorities and to adhere to all applicable codes and regulations. In summary, determining the appropriate workspace clearance for a 4000 amp service requires careful consideration of several factors, including the voltage of the equipment, the physical size and configuration of the equipment, the specific tasks that are likely to be performed during maintenance and repairs, and applicable codes and regulations. While the NEC doesn't explicitly specify a clearance for 4000 amp services, it's generally recommended to provide a minimum of 3 feet of workspace clearance in front of the equipment and 2 feet of workspace clearance on all other sides. It's also important to ensure that the workspace is clear and unobstructed, adequately illuminated, and provides safe access and egress. Following these guidelines will help to ensure the safe operation and maintenance of the electrical equipment. Remember to always consult with qualified professionals and adhere to all applicable codes and regulations when working with electrical equipment. Electrical safety is paramount, and proper planning and execution are essential to prevent accidents and injuries. Think safety first, last, and always. For example, let's talk about the actual tasks for the maintenance. If the task at hand for the maintenance is tightening a bus bar connection, then there needs to be enough space for a calibrated torque wrench to tighten the connection. If there is a need to pull a large molded K-circuit breaker, then there needs to be space to physically remove it. As we spoke about previously, one needs to consider the local codes and regulations in addition to the NEC. Sometimes your local municipality may require more clearance than what the NEC suggests as a minimum. Always adhere to the highest standard. In addition to all the things discussed, you have to be a qualified person to work on electrical equipment. You need to be trained on how to properly use personal protective equipment such as a face shield and arc flash suit, and know the requirements in the area for said equipment. You need to be familiar with the equipment that you are working on as well. A 4000 amp service is a big responsibility, and if you are not confident that you know what you are doing, then you should not work on the equipment and consult with a qualified person instead. The NEC is updated on a 3-year cycle, so make sure you have the latest and greatest version. States and local municipalities adopt different versions of the NEC, so you need to be up to date with both of them. Remember to also follow best practices and always de-energize before working on any equipment. If you cannot de-energize before working on equipment, then follow all safety precautions to make sure you do not get out. High current equipment has many dangers involved, such as very high arc flash and arc blast ratings. A 4000 amp service is a lot of power and should not be taken lightly, and you need to consider all precautions before doing work on it. Remember that you should consult a qualified professional if you are unsure about something. Electricians are trained to work on this kind of equipment, and it is best to leave it to them if you are not one. A professional has been working with this equipment and has the experience and knowledge to perform the job safely.